Welcome to today's presentation, Exit Strategies for Windows Server 2008 End of Support. Don't keep your legacy apps in a holding pattern. Let's go ahead and get started. Trevor, over to you.
Thank you. All right, so just going to touch on this again quickly. I know Erin just did a lovely introduction for us both, but as she said, I'm Trevor Hess. I'm a lead partner solutions architect here at Chef, and this whole Windows 2008 story has been a big part of my focus this year, and so I'm really excited to talk more about it with you. Dan, if you want to give yourself a quick little introduction.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Dan Choquette, Services for Chef. We've spent an inordinate amount of time working with our customers over the past few months in helping them solve this challenge as it pertains to migrating Windows 2008 to 2016 and appropriate platforms. And very excited to talk to you about what we have to offer today.
And fun fact, Dan and I are both from the New England area, which we only discovered about 3 weeks ago.
New Hampshire even.
Right? All right. So today we're going to talk a little bit about we're going to talk a little bit about the perspective of what's going on with the Windows 2008 end of support upcoming. We're going to talk a little bit about what Chef Habitat is. I'm going to show you our Windows Server 2008 IIS accelerator, and I'm going to show you a demo of moving a site with it. And then Dan's going to talk to you a bit about how you can succeed in partnership with our Chef Professional Services team. And then we're going to take some time to answer whatever questions you folks have. However, first thing we're going to do is I think we're going to ask you a few questions of our own. So in just a moment, you'll have some questions show up over your screen. If you could go ahead and answer those, we'll talk a little bit about each of these as we go forward. So the first question we've got here is, how many servers do you have today that are running Windows Server 2008 or Windows Server 2008 R2? Now, those don't have to be specifically IIS servers. These can be basically just anything in your fleet today that is running that operating system that is going end of support here in the next 6 months. Give you folks a second to click those radio buttons, and let's go forward. All right. So 1 to 100 here was pretty common. We've also got some folks that have got 500 to 1,000, and a lot of folks on the call here aren't sure how big the scale of this issue is for you or your business. All right. Let's move on to the next question. What is your current plan to remediate these servers that are running on 2008 R2? Are you going to do nothing and run with the risk of doing nothing? Are you going to purchase extended support from Microsoft? Are you going to move those workloads into Azure? Are you going to refactor or rewrite those applications? Are you going to take the time to replace or retire those applications? Or are you not sure what you're going to do yet? All right. Let's see what you all have to say. Sounds like most of you are going to replace or retire those systems. So we take a look here. Let's go down the next question. What do you see as your biggest challenge in getting off of Windows Server 2008 R2? Is it licensing costs, resource costs, the technical challenges, runtime errors you may run into trying to move those applications, older applications that aren't 32-bit or higher that can't run on modern Windows systems without extraneous effort? Is it support for management? Is it everything? right? Are these problems things you're seeing across the board, and they're inhibiting your ability to sunset these old systems? All right, let's see what y'all had to say. Got a lot of folks looking at the challenges in licensing costs, challenges in resource costs. Seems the biggest problem is a tie between technical challenges and all of the above, that's actually what we're hearing from a lot of folks. It's a vast combination of all of these different challenges that are inhibiting our ability to get off of Server 2008. So, as I'm sure everybody on this call is painfully aware, extended support for 2008 goes away on January 14th, 2020, which is it's less than 6 months away now at this stage. As we get closer to that date, we know that once it goes by, if we do nothing, the security risks go through the roof. Large percentages of security issues are sourced from outdated and unpatched software. 57% of victims who experience, or breach victims specifically, say that the breach was due to a known unpatched vulnerability. And once you fall into these risk categories, you're no longer compliant with many of your standards. You're going to lose support from a lot of third-party applications. It becomes harder to find the right people to maintain these servers, and it can increase the amount of time that downtime will take. And on top of that, if you are going to need to make a change to these systems that are out of date, you're still stuck with increased support costs and unscheduled work from trying to keep those systems running. Now, we know this is a sizable problem. As it is, Microsoft estimates that there are currently 24 million instances of Windows Server and SQL Server 2008 running in the world. I've seen statistics that say that there is an estimated 50+ million IIS applications running on Server 2008 as well. So this is a very large problem. And so Microsoft, of course, is giving you the options about how you can address these issues. You can remain on-premise or in your existing deployment and pay for extended support. Or you can use their tooling and everything to move your server into Azure and get a few more years of extended support for free through Azure. Why is it hard to move these applications in the first place, though? Why is it that we're stuck between this rock and a hard place of do nothing or pay more money or undertake work to move these applications? There are so many dependencies that these applications have, and these applications no longer have teams. They take time to figure out what they're built on, what packages and libraries they depend on, how they're configured. All of these things take time to go through, and something I call application forensics. You have to do the forensics on your applications to understand where everything is. If you're experienced in the .NET world at all, you've probably heard the expression DLL hell, where the DLLs for an application, they could be in the bin for the application itself. They could be in the global assembly cache or the GAC. They could be in system files. They could be in folders throughout the operating system. It's hard to know where all of those DLLs are. And so we have to think about how we can gather all that and move it forward. And if you look at some of the earlier options that have been available to you, there's the do nothing there's the extended support agreement, and there's the rehost, but you still aren't moving the problem forward. You still don't know where your dependencies are. You still don't know how to maintain and manage that application. Really, all you've done is either ignored or shifted the problem. And those apps still need to be remediated. And you have to effectively maybe even pay twice to solve the actual issue that you're dealing with. You're just maybe putting it off a little bit. The other thing here, right, is we could try to lift the ship rehost, but also include a refactor and a rewrite. But sometimes you're still going to have those dependency challenges. It's complicated. It involves a lot of work because you may need to reevaluate how the application works in the entire process. It could be expensive. This application hasn't had an app team for a reason, right? These applications, they're long-lived. They're probably undergoing very little maintenance or updates even. Came up with a new term for these the other day. We called them parasitic symbionts. They stick around because we need them to, but they're also draining our resources and put us in danger of not making our deadline of getting off of these old operating systems. And chances are at this stage, if you're on this call and you don't have a plan in place for how you're getting off of 2008 and it's August 15th, you're probably going to miss the deadline of January 14th. So what if you could repackage your application, maintaining your manageability characteristics in the same way you would a cloud app, without needing to do the refactoring or the rewriting or any of that stuff that takes all that extra work that we're trying to avoid doing because we want to focus on more current problems that are more interesting and potentially even more important to the business. But we still need to bring these apps forward. Well, you can. You can let those applications have their own life cycle with Chef. So using Chef Habitat, you can package your applications and document as code their application life cycle. So you can define how that application, if you need to, how that application is built, how that application is run, what its dependencies are, all of it, so that when you package that application in Habitat, you can deploy it on 2012 R2, 2016, 2019, a Windows container. It doesn't matter where you want to put it. You just take that package, which contains your application, its dependencies, and the instructions on how it exists. How does it get installed? How does it run? What does it do if it needs to take an update? How does it stop? All of those instructions travel with the application so that it can be maintained under automation. So in taking that forward, you can avoid having to worry about the ongoing manageability of 30 different ways that you're trying to manage your application life cycles. You don't have to have somebody go into each of these machines and change, go into IIS and start or stop a website, or even use a Chef cookbook to try and maintain that state. You can let the application have its rules about how it should operate and how you know if it's healthy or not. You can expand on where your environments are. So you can say, I need to move my application from one cost center to another cost center. You can change where that application is deployed and put it somewhere else without having to worry about all the time it takes to copy a VM. You just redeploy the application because everything it needs goes with it. And with that, you can reduce that operational overhead that you've got because you can manage those applications as code instead of needing to understand it all by hand. Now, we say we have the easiest and fastest way to move these IIS websites. So we put together a tool after recognizing some different patterns when we were packaging these IIS applications. And so we go in and we bundle up the applications that we find. So we run our IIS site migration accelerator. We pull out all of the sites that we find running in IIS. We generate habitat plans for them so that you can take those applications, stand them up, and get them running again in a new location. See if there's anything wrong with them. You know, the accelerators is going to get probably 80 to 90% of the application. There may be some very specific configuration or pieces that you have to your application that need to be found. But we found that most of these things are very easily troubleshooted once you've done the work of extracting all the dependencies. We remediate those issues, and then we package and put through a pipeline with Habitat so that we can take that new application that's now packaged in Habitat and put it on the servers that we want to be running on now, whether that's, like I said, 2012 R2, 2016, 2019. Now, you may think that this sounds crazy, that this sounds too good to be true. Well, we went out recently. I would say most recently was this morning. I was with a customer and we captured 20 apps off of a IIS server and got them running in Habitat. Previous to that, we went out to another Fortune 500 company and packaged 75 sites in less than 8 hours and got them running, and even had them pipelined in Azure DevOps. Most of them were scanned and packaged in minutes. One app had some very odd configuration. In fact, we discovered that the app was misconfigured, and we were able to fix that and get it packaged in 3 hours. But it's probably enough of me just talking to you all about what it is that we can do. I'm going to guess that you all might like to see what it is we can do. So I'm going to share my screen with you all. All right. Wait a second here just to make sure that the site has loaded my desktop. All right. So I have this old .NET ASP MVC 1.0 application that I've got running on a 2008 box out and in this case it's on Azure, but it could be running anywhere. It's still a functional application. I can come in here and add another one of my favorite movies to it. So I'll go ahead and I'm going to add Iron Man in here. So let's see, I probably have it cached here for me. So we'll add Iron Man. Iron Man's now part of my site. Great, my site still works, but it's running on 2008, and that's not where I need it to be running. I need it to be running on modern Windows. So if I go into my desktop where I've got my scripts ready to go, I can perform my app extraction. So what this is doing is it's connecting to my Windows Server 2008 box. It's running our Habitat Accelerator tool on that box in IIS. It found one site on there, one application, my movieapp.com site. It extracted that, it pulled out all the DLLs, exported it, and sent it back across the wire to my system. So now I have a repository I got ready out here. We'll see it's empty. I'm going to upload that code, and I'm going to enroll this into Azure DevOps pipelines. So once that's there, I can actually trigger a build. So if we look back here now, we're going to see that I've got the code. I'm going to come over here and queue up a build while I show you a little bit about what we've captured. So let's go look at the repo. So we'll see here we've got the website. It's in a folder. we've got our habitat package that was generated. This is where our generated code is. You'll see we even captured the web config. And not only that, we leveraged some of the configuration capabilities in Habitat to automatically parameterize some of the common application settings that we find in IIS websites. So you'll see here, we've actually parameterized the connection string and the app settings for our movie database so that we can actually pass in those connection settings. So if we have a instance of this site that runs in a development environment that connects to one database and one that runs in production that runs on a production database, we can easily modify what this package deployment connects to by updating those configuration settings. We come back out here, we can see exactly what the tool did. It goes through and it's looking at all of the DLLs up the tree to find everything that the application needs to run, pulling things out of the GAC, pulling things out of the assembly store, and it's putting those all in this publish folder, which is the captured contents of our site. So you'll see here, this is where we pulled in all the dependent DLLs that this application depends on. So if we come back over to our build here, we'll see our build has succeeded. Let me maximize this real quick. So in here, it's getting everything ready on our build agent. It's setting up our origin key for Habitat so that we can securely build our package. It's building our Habitat plan, pulling in our dependencies. In this case, we depend on .NET 3.5. We depend on DSC Core. We're pulling those things in. We pull in the IIS server. We then take the output build package, get an artifact so that we can now come in here. I can download this artifact now. This is a hearts file, a Habitat artifact. So now I can take this application that I just captured. And then I can go into Habitat. Let me snap this to the side, and then I'll snap this to the side. So on the right here is my Habitat supervisor that I'm connected to so that I can see what we've got out here. I've already installed the package, so now I just need to load the service. So if I could do hab service load, actually I'm just gonna, this is gonna take that package that I built. It's going to use the configuration that I defined and the what we call application lifecycle hooks. You'll see it runs through initialization here, and then it's going to go into the run hook. That's how I define what the lifecycle of my application looks like. As part of initialize, I go through and I set it up so that our site has all of its files in the place that we expect it to be. As part of the run, I enforce that DSC has enforced that our website exists in IIS and that it's running. And it continues to enforce that on a loop to make sure that our site is the way that we expect it to be. So if I come here on my local machine, I've got my app running here now on Windows Server 2016. It still works. So if I can come in here and say, if I can type, I can say the Rousseau brothers, and let's see, I think that was, I'm just making up the release date because it's not the important part here, but so there we go. My site is now moved. Not only is it moved, but if you remember, I mentioned that we can go in and we can update the target of the database. So I actually, in the cooking show magic style, I gave it different parameters when we connected. So if I go and open VS Code and go to Tools and go to my Hab config toml, I've actually updated this so that it's pointing to a database that I have running in Azure rather than the old on-prem database that I was using before. So that is an application that in minutes we've now seen go from running on 2008 R2 to running on 2016, connected to a new database, still works, still runs, and here we are. As I said before, we've done this at several customers now, and they've been quite happy with the results. So now we can do DevOps and cloud support right out of the gate. If we look at what this looks like as a reference architecture, right, we've got our legacy environments. We've got our tooling that we run. So we run the Habitat Accelerator on our legacy environments. We pull out those IIS sites. We generate the Habitat templates. We bundle it all together. That all can be uploaded into GitHub where it can be built in Azure DevOps. We can then take the packages that we build, put them into artifact storage, and then distribute them to our environments where we need them to run in the modern world. So from here, we get the ability to have scalable automation for all applications and environments. This accelerator focuses primarily on IIS applications right now, but when you couple this with the Chef Enterprise Automation Stack, you can align your application management, your audit security, and your infrastructure management, and express all of that as code with an observability layer and a great developer experience so that you can continuously maintain your environment and express everything as code that can be managed going forward. Now, getting to that point may seem a little daunting to you, but thankfully we have a wonderful professional services team and a fantastic success team who are going to be right there by your side to help you get to that point. So it's my pleasure to let Dan take over and tell you a little bit more about how we can help you get to this point with our accelerator tools and with our help.
Thanks, Trevor. Thanks, everybody. The main goal of Chef Services is to provide leadership and guidance to our customers. And those are sometimes very hard conversations to have. We have many customers that have a very focused plan in place on, as it pertains to their migration strategy. We have other customers in which are exploring this and have many questions and, quite frankly, don't know what they don't know. So it's our job to help them travel that journey. And a lot of that conversation and discussion is almost a scenario in which we're asking our customers to perform a self-assessment and have an organizational kumbaya, if you will, to agree as to where you are and where they are in this migration journey. So a lot of what we try to do is, from a coaching standpoint, asking questions, is to have that unified understanding of what needs to be accomplished. And a lot of this, of course, is around understanding your current state and having an organizational agreed upon view of where you are in your adoption and your migration specifically. The second part of that is, what's it going to take? From a planning perspective, who do I need to involve? What technologies are dependent? What do we need to understand from a risk standpoint, security, access, and such? And then there's actually the doing, which we're all extremely busy in our careers and our jobs and such, and is actually just going and moving forward and starting on that journey. And then, of course, is doing, which always is the hardest part because we're all, again, very busy with our jobs and fighting fires and such. So the doing part and having an approach and getting started, that's the easy part. Where we find customers having that next challenge, if you will, is scaling their their initiative? How do we accommodate the non-low-hanging fruit Windows applications? And then once we've done that, what are some of the other things we can now explore and move forward from an innovative stage? So from that standpoint, we've from a services organization have done this a long time, and we have a number of different partners and people that are part of our team that have this experience. Certainly in our technology, but also from an institutional knowledge standpoint. Myself, I've worked at a very large cloud provider and a few other stops along the way. We have a number of people on our team that have worked probably in similar capacities as y'all have, within cloud and infrastructure and application development, that have this experience of and scars, if you will, of implementing and conducting these types of initiatives. But where we found our sweet spot from an engagement standpoint is collaborating with our customers and developing an approach together. I mean, there's no one that knows your infrastructure and your challenges better than you do. And again, our approach and methodology and how we partner with our customers is to understand that and come up with a plan together. And the ultimate goal is for us to leave you and operate independently and self-sufficiently. Babysitting our customers, I don't think, is a great outcome for Chef, nor is it for you. It's a matter for us to empower you and provide you with turnkey solutions and leadership and how to get to the ultimate outcome that you're expecting. So from that standpoint, very simply, our approach, and we're obviously very agile in our delivery and methodology, and not to speak for our engineering team and product team, but certainly our approach is to fail and fail fast and succeed and learn from it and innovate. So a lot of course, what we do is to assess and define and work with you to understand what is success, technically, operationally, and from a business standpoint. And then from that standpoint, let's just go and certainly understand our risks and dependencies, but understand as far as what's it going to take to validate that initial success. Moving forward, it's now empowering and enabling, if you will, you to adapt and to move forward in migrating other applications and the rest of your application inventory. And then part of this iterative process, of course, is to understand behavior, issues, non-issues, and then make sure there are consistent feedback loops throughout the engagement, whether it's our team working with you directly, but also enabling different organizations within your environment to collaborate effectively. So from a packaging standpoint, and yes, this is specific to services, but what Chef wants to, I think, accomplish with this offering is to provide our customers with a turnkey solution. Of course, there's software involved and folks like Trevor to provide the product leadership. But the way we want to approach this is providing our customers with an outcome. And again, the mileage may vary, as you probably have noticed in the bottom part of the slide, where we have some customers, as I'll talk to it a little bit, have dozens and dozens of applications that are from an urgency perspective need to move now or yesterday. We have some customers that are still in that planning phase. But what we want to do at Chef is, again, provide you with that turnkey packaged offering in which from week 1 to week 4, or depending on your size and complexity, number of applications, ask Chef or your rep or someone like Trevor or myself, okay, I have this many applications, this is my environment, these are the integrations I need to be concerned about, this is the platform that I'm considering, how long is it going to take? And it's on us to provide you with that leadership and that time estimates, because obviously you're faced with a time dilemma on your own. So from that perspective, again, very methodical, but very turnkey in package in terms of how we can accelerate your adoption and your migration to the next level. So from that standpoint, as Trevor had alluded to earlier, this is from a problem statement standpoint, is very challenging from an expense standpoint, additional expense extended support costs and what have you, but there's also the issue of your staff and team. So that the whole goal behind Habitat and from a services enablement standpoint is for you to avoid extended contracts, refactoring and rewriting, not looking to bring on additional staff, and being very liquid in your team organizational structure. But also look to leverage existing tools and technologies that can be repurposed and used moving forward. Depending on where you are, and we certainly don't want to go down the conversation of the cloud journey. That's been probably talked about more than you care to hear again. But from a adoption standpoint, we don't want to purpose and position this as simply a lift and shift. This is a lift and adopt. From that standpoint, time is money with cloud. The whole goal is to keep those costs as to a minimum as possible and move forward. As you know very well, with cloud platforms and different sizes of instances, your costs may vary, and the goal is to, of course, understand the footprint and workload requirements of these applications and make sure that you're not paying for speeds and fees and compute that are overkill, if you will. So the point is to help you optimize your investments into cloud. And of course, from a Habitat technology perspective, it's to certainly be very conforming to Azure in its portfolio of technologies. But if you have a multi-cloud strategy, this allows you to realize those benefits. From an overhead standpoint, certainly, as you can all imagine, this can be very manually intensive, and the whole goal of Habitat is to streamline and reduce that amount of time, accelerate your time to value, and of course, allow you to mitigate any type of risks. And when we talk about risks, we recently engaged with a very large airline, and certainly the issue that they have is certainly around .NET applications, moving to Azure. But a lot of what they wanted to do was innovate. They wanted to take full advantage of their ADO pipelines. They wanted to get more of an understanding of the directory infrastructures. They wanted to be much more innovative in how they were approaching their technology vision. And a lot of what we've done for them was to provide bespoke training, understand their operational desires, if you will, and help them collaborate with them on a plan to move forward. So a lot of that stuff that we did during the engagement, developing policy files and such, I mean, that's part of the engagement from a technical perspective. But at the end of the day, and major manufacturer as well, as you can see here, but at the end of the day, it was a business decision as to why they wanted to work with Chef and Chef Services was to reduce that cost, reduce that risk, work with them. They obviously had some questions around developing security advanced capabilities. We help them with that with the inspect part. So a lot of that is sometimes undiscovered when embarking on this journey, but it's the types of issues that certainly need to be addressed and discussed. So from that standpoint, this is the sales part of it. Certainly, if you'd like to learn more, reach out to certainly Chef or in the Q&A and let us know if you'd like to get started with an assessment. And as part of that, of course, there's other information that we can certainly provide you from a resources perspective, white paper, modernizing legacy applications, the digital age, and certainly we have our Chef Rally site, which can provide you with a breadth of information to educate you on Habitat and our other technologies if you're not already familiar.
All right.
Thank you.
So, if you haven't checked out those resources yet, they're in the resource list widget, so feel free to download the white paper there. There's also the deck there, and then, of course, check out Learn Chef Rally, which has a ton of learning opportunities in that as well. So, going to open it up for questions now. We actually got quite a few, so stick around, and we hope to get through all the questions that were asked. Feel free to send any more that you may have thought of in the time being. So I'm going to move to this one. I think it was around your demo, Trevor. We had somebody ask if you moved the DB before the presentation or if it's part of the Habitat package process.
So the answer to that question is yes, I did move the database before I ran the demo. Now, you can package a database in Habitat. However, Habitat is not a data migration tool. You can use whatever tool that you're most comfortable with in moving your data. And then you can use the Habitat configuration points to update your database connections. But that's a great question. Thank you.
Okay, and next one here, I think we have two questions kind of along the same lines. Just wondering why the reference is only to Azure Cloud if we support AWS migrations. Is this tool only for Microsoft-based applications, or can it work for other technologies as well?
So I'll start with the cloud question. This will run on any cloud, right? This will run on-prem. As long as it runs on a server, it'll run, right? In this case, we're talking about the IIS application, so you still need to have a Windows server, 2012 forward, or a Windows container, but it doesn't matter where those are. They just need to be there. So if you want to run it in maybe AWS, Google, Azure, DigitalOcean, or wherever it is you're trying to run your server infrastructure, you can deploy those applications to it. Now, to answer the other question, is this tool only for Microsoft technologies? So the accelerator we showed today, the accelerator right now is only running with IIS applications. We're in the process of working on Tomcat applications or Java web applications as another accelerator, and we're looking into other options as we move forward as well. As for Habitat, Habitat will run on Windows or Linux. So it doesn't matter if it doesn't need to be a Microsoft technology to package an application with Habitat. It just needs to be compatible. And in that case, there's a kernel minimum on Linux, and on Windows it just needs to be 32-bit or higher, .NET 2 or higher, and that has to be able to be installed with a silent installer.
All right, great. Another question here, how can we package all DLLs in Habitat package?
So packaging those DLLs, so what we do is we actually use reflection to figure out where all the DLLs are on the system, and we bring them into the bin folder. So we're basically mapping out the DLL hell and then pulling everything together. The way that .NET does DLL precedence, it's going to pull out of the bin folder first. So as long as those DLLs are available, your application can come up in its new world and run the way we expect it to.
All right. Another question here, are there ways to find dependencies? Many old apps are not well documented and have no development support.
So that is absolutely the goal of the accelerator. We found that going out with our customers and trying to help them do that application forensics was taking 3 to 5 days to figure out these applications that are no longer under development, not documented. It was really challenging to figure out where all the components were across the system. And so that's why we developed the accelerator, because we were recognizing we were doing the same sort of things to look for those dependencies. And so we took those patterns that we found and automated them. And in that automation came the accelerator. And so you can now use the accelerator to pull in all of those dependencies.
Cool. On to the next one here. Can you pull all of the IIS sites on a single box?
So yes, you can pull all the sites and applications off of a single box. You can target that tool like you saw me run in the demo. You can run that tool against a server, and by default, it's going to pull all of the sites and applications out. Or you can use an expression to say ignore apps of a certain name, or you can only include apps of a certain name. But yes, you can extract everything that's running an IIS on one of those servers.
All right, thanks, Trevor. On to the next. How do you handle sites with secrets?
Excellent question. So sites with secrets, a lot of times those secrets today are actually stored in plain text in the web config. If your app was developed well, it may actually have a machine key. So what we do is we will basically mirror exactly as it is today when we capture the application. But once you have that in Habitat, you can then leverage tools like Hashi Vault to put those into secret storage so that they're not being just transferred across the world in an unsecure way.
All right, a couple more here. Does this work for applications you can no longer compile?
Yes, it does work for applications you can no longer compile. So if you have an application that is completely orphaned, the source code's gone, maybe it was a piece of commercial off-the-shelf software that you've lost the installer for, or the vendor's gone, and all you have is the version that's running on that one box that you really don't want to let go away because it's so important. Because of the way the tool works, because it's going into the system and finding the dependencies, bundling them together, and building a plan from it, you don't need those source files. Obviously, you won't be able to make changes to the compiled code, but you can capture the application and move it to a new operating system.
All right, great. And I think this will be our last question. I think it's a good one to end on. How long does a typical assessment take?
So an assessment, it's a matter of figuring out what your estate looks like. And there's a few approaches we can use to do that. I'll let Dan, do you want to take this a little bit, or do you want me to answer it?
Yeah, I mean, sure. The assessment it takes depends specifically on a number of applications or the types of questions we'll ask, high-level application architecture, and your end state and desired outcomes. Certainly, we want to understand. So a high-level assessment can take as little as half a day to a full day.
All right, thank you. Okay, so we had a couple more sneak in, so we'll answer these, but we still got some time. I think relating back to the previous question and answer, is the investigation only for website apps? Can it be used for console type apps?
So the accelerator is only going to work with websites today. However, console-based applications are something that we're looking at supporting. And so that would be something that we could work with you to look at adding to the accelerator pattern. So if you're an existing customer, you can reach out to your success team and they can get you in contact with me, and we can start looking at how we would address that. I see we've got another question here about if the versions of the .NET assemblies aren't supported. This actually came up during our presentation about this at ChefConf, and one of our good friends at Microsoft and one of our partner representatives actually stood up and said, as long as they're running on modern Windows, you're okay. The only asterisk to that is if the .NET version is not supported on the modern operating system, then you're not going to be able to do that. So that's why I said your application needs to be .NET 1.0 or higher. Or sorry, .NET 2.0 or higher, because we do not support .NET 1.0 because it does not run on 2012 plus. All
right. Well, great. I think we will end it there. Thank you, Trevor and Dan, again, for a great presentation. So as a reminder, everybody, a copy of today's presentation is located in the resource list widget at the bottom of your screen. We, of course, hope you found value in all the information that was presented today. So if you like what you saw, we encourage you to share the presentation with your team and professional networks. The on-demand version should be available by tomorrow. and we'll email you as soon as it's ready. You'll be able to access it using the same audience link that you're using right now. And just a heads up that we're running another webinar in about 2 weeks with our friends at Datadog. It's called Migrate Your Apps with Confidence, and we'll walk through how Chef and Datadog together can help make your migrations a success. So you can find more information about that webinar and register on the Chef webinars or Chef events page. So with that, thank you everybody for your time today and have a wonderful day.